And welcome back to the front page. I am Dara Star Tucker. You're listening to Radio Free, 102.3 FM, KJLH. We are back with more of our conversation with Dr. Zackory Kirk, and we are talking this morning about the government shutdown. Why are we in this situation? We have a lot of basic questions that folks have had, and folks, when they think about these major issues that are happening within the federal government, a lot of times this stuff can be so obscured by spin. If you're watching these politicians and their appearances on these Sunday morning shows, if you're watching the little clips you're seeing coming through your social media, a lot of times it's a matter of who's talking and how they choose to depict the whole thing. One of the lines that you hear quite often, Zackory, and this is one of the complaints that I've gotten very recently, which is, when the Republicans talk about why the shutdown is happening, they continue to use this reasoning and this line that it's all about Democrats wanting to provide health insurance for illegal immigrants or for undocumented immigrants, whatever way you want to say it. They continue to repeat this talking point that that's what this shutdown is about. Oh, the Democrats are we're laying off workers and people aren't being paid and the government is not functioning as it should because Democrats are just so determined to give health care to so-called illegal immigrants or undocumented immigrants. What is your response to that, Dr. Kirk?
I'm glad you said that. That is one of the biggest misconceptions out there and one of the biggest selling points that Republicans are making to the American people. And that's because there is funding allocated to emergency rooms for emergency room care so that anyone who comes into the emergency room will be able to receive life-saving care. So currently 0.4% of people served have been undocumented migrants coming to the emergency room for care. 0.4%. Now, I want you to think about this. If you go to a foreign country and you have a medical emergency, should you be denied life-saving care because you're not a citizen of that country? Mm-hmm. You're visiting Paris. You're on a family vacation to Durban, South Africa. You're somewhere else in the world and you have a heart attack, God forbid, or you have a stroke, or you get into a car accident, or you get hit by a bus, or you fall off a cliff. Should you be denied health care because of the fact that you're not a citizen of that country? Because that is, in essence, what Republicans are saying when they don't want to allow any of this funding to be used to support hospitals that provide this care, because that's how it works. That's what they're complaining about. That's what they're saying. So, no, this isn't saying that, okay, I'm an undocumented person in the United States of America and I have a right to take American taxpayer dollars to get health care. That's not what's happening.
Yeah. I think, what the perception that they are creating is that, this is the perception that Republicans want to create in the minds of the American public because they want to cast this as a much more extreme situation than what it is. And they want to deflect attention from the fact that they are literally trying to take away people's healthcare subsidies or prevent people from having healthcare subsidies, Americans from having healthcare subsidies. But the way they are casting or portraying this is, an undocumented immigrant, someone who is not here legally, can just waltz up on the ACA website and go sign up for coverage. And that's what the Democrats are fighting for. And that is entirely false. What Dr. Kirk just said was, this is really just a question of whether or not hospitals can provide care in the case of an emergency. And we have something in this country called EMTALA, and this is a law called the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act, which passed in 1986 under Ronald Reagan. Now, this is a Republican president. The EMTALA law basically says that you cannot deny emergency care to anyone. So if somebody walks into an emergency room with their head bleeding, or they've been in a car accident, or their appendix is about to explode, a doctor is not going to sit there and say, what is your legal status? I can't treat you if you're not here in this country legally. No, anyone that walks into that emergency room, and, like I said, having lived abroad, traveled abroad, I'm thankful that these laws exist in most so-called developed countries. If you walk into an emergency room, that hospital has to treat you. Now, because that hospital is very unlikely to ask in an emergency situation. Now, like Dr. Kirk said, 0.4% of the ACA funds are going to helping undocumented immigrants in an emergency situation. This is exactly what is being argued here, that this small bit of funds should not even exist. How many doctors are asking people what their legal status is when they come in and they are victims of a car accident or something like that? It's not even happening. And so we're not even questioning whether or not they could get care in an emergency situation, because those doctors are hopefully going to do the right thing and provide care, as their Hippocratic oath says that they should provide care. But what we are doing when we are taking away the ability of Medicaid to pay the hospital once they provide treatment and they submit the bill, I don't even know who at what point is asking whether these people are legal or not. But the question is, once that hospital provides coverage and care, will Medicaid pay for it? Will the government pay for it? That is literally what is in question right now. Republicans want to take away the ability of Medicaid to provide reimbursement or payment to those hospitals, rural or otherwise, for care that they provided to someone who was here just because they were undocumented. And who does that hurt? It actually does not hurt the person who was here illegally, because that care has already passed. It hurts the hospitals. And when the hospitals are hurt and they are not being paid by the government for care that they have already provided in an emergency situation, when they are having to eat those costs, then what happens? Dr. Kirk, I'm going to let you take over from there.
Yeah, they have to then, we are all going to continuously get a lower standard of care. Period. Yeah. The system is overwhelmed,
or higher costs, or both,
and we have to absorb those costs. It is illegal. Like you cannot. And I did want to get further verification. It's illegal. You cannot receive any like medical support, period, if you are in this country illegally and you're ineligible for federally funded healthcare. Like it has never happened, and it isn't going to happen. Like it's not there. And we're looking at a cost rise of insurance premiums by more than 140% on average. So you look at a 140% increase on average for enrollees whose use of subsidies, leading to an estimated 3.8 million more Americans becoming uninsured. 3.8 million Americans. So now we're looking at our fellow Americans being uninsured, going and receiving emergency services, and then having hospitals not being able to recuperate those funds, or having money being pumped in to get those funds, and then looking at what will then happen to all of the American people as a result of it.
Yeah, this is what happens when you have a large percentage of the population who cannot afford health insurance. I've been reading a book. I read a book called The Sum of Us, and I want to pull up the author's name right now because I've been recommending this book to everyone. Do you know this book, Dr.
Yes,
Kirk?
yes.
The Sum of Us. And I would recommend that you read this book because she talks about the author, Heather McGhee, who I really want to have on the show at some point. But she talks about what happens in a society when we work so hard just to try to prevent, and we've seen this in the Black community, since we got here. When people vote against their own best interest because they are so concerned with someone that they feel is not deserving getting some sort of benefit. The Republicans are dangling this out there like a carrot. Oh my goodness, look at these Democrats. They are going to give these illegal immigrants health care. Can you believe this? This is what they want to do. And so we're going to let the government be shut down over this. Meanwhile, if the Republicans are allowed to have their way, a bunch of people, as Dr. Kirk was saying, will lose their ability to even afford health care. And we're talking about actual, citizens, Americans. Many, 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 many more citizens and Americans will lose their ability to actually sign up for the Affordable Care Act that is available to them. They'll no longer be able to afford it. But it's all because we're trying to prevent someone who is here, who is undocumented, from receiving health care. Talk to me, Dr. Kirk, about how we allow these sort of culture wars, I guess, to come between us and implementing common sense laws. I mean, this is across the board. You can really look at this in so many different areas. Right now, it's a healthcare battle, but it goes into so many different areas. Can you talk about the dangers of just, well, I don't want black folks to be able to have this. Oh, these are welfare queens. We don't want them to be able to have this. Meanwhile, white women are some of the biggest recipients of so-called welfare in this country. Can you just talk about that mentality of pitting groups against each other in this way?
It is a calculated and carefully cultivated strategy that has been used by an entire group of people that have a certain type of ideology to ensure that Americans are divided continuously and distracted by things that have absolutely no real value in making decisions, political decisions, policy decisions. That's the focus of it. If you are more worried about your neighbor who may or may not be trans, then you are about the affordability of your health care, then they've won. If you're more concerned about your neighbor who is a migrant to this country here seeking asylum because they were under assault and threat of death in their native land, then you are about the rising price of food in your grocery store, then they have won. And they know that. They
Hmm.
know that listen, Project 2025 polled at less than 4% of American popularity.
Hmm.
People, when they found out about the things that were embedded within Project 2025 from the Heritage Foundation, it was wildly unpopular. Republicans said it wasn't real. Republicans said it wasn't platform. Republicans said this is all a lie from the left, the radical left. We're now seeing over 50% of this document has already been implemented at warp breakneck speed.
Hmm.
Yet again, less than a year ago, it was all lies. Yet it's been implemented. If the American people were looking at and aware of what is happening in the government from a particular party in this moment, they would be up in arms and outraged. So every single time this comes up, that the policies become known, that people start to talk about the rise in inflation, the loss of jobs, attack against their freedoms, they bring out the culture war, they bring out the distraction to continually take people's minds away from the harsh reality of how they are destroying the things that truly make America a nation that we want to live in.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's
That's where it comes from. This
yeah.
focus on the things that divide us instead of the common things that unite us, because we're actually united by wanting freedom. We're actually united by wanting opportunity, the American dream, and the sense of who we really are as Americans. Those are the things that unite us. Those are the things that unfortunately are no longer being talked about by one party.
Yeah. So how do we fight back against this misinformation and disinformation around what this is about and where do we go from here? What happens next? I mean, a lot of people didn't even think that Hakeem Jeffries, who is the Speaker of the House, and Chuck Schumer, who is the Senate Minority Leader, they didn't even think that they would have the fortitude and to be able to withstand this because they are being, there's a huge, like I said, disinformation campaign that is being waged against them. Oh, this is the Democrats' fault. They just want to give health care to illegal immigrants and all of this stuff. But they're standing their ground so far. I mean, what happens next?
Eventually, the government's going to open, right? It's going to reopen. Somebody's going to back down. Someone's going to give up. And history is not I don't think history's on our side.
Hmm.
If I was a betting man, Dara, I would have to say I think the Democrats are going to eventually cave because I have noticed that they don't like to see people suffer. They don't like to see
Hmm.
people hurt. And the American people are going to hurt a lot more the longer this drags on. People are literally unable to pay their bills this month. Families are unable to buy grocery this month because of the shutdown.
Hmm.
And it's not large numbers in comparison to the American population, but when it's just one family that's affected, it's just one family too many.
Hmm.
Uh, the flight patterns in our airports are being impacted by TSA workers who aren't getting paid, who are saying they're not coming to work.
Hmm.
So all of those things is right now a small trickle of an impact that's soon going to become within weeks of flood if the government doesn't reopen. And it doesn't look like to me that many Republicans are extremely empathetic and care. What the American people should be doing is putting as much pressure as possible on their lawmaker, whoever they may be, whether they're Democrats or Republicans, and really pressing hard and demanding that they reach consensus. If you and hearing what they're doing, really find out, is your lawmaker in the halls of Congress as they should be working the job they were hired or elected to do, or are they on recess on vacation?
Hmm.
If they are, they should be at the very least in their home districts talking to the people. I haven't seen it from a Republican in Georgia. I don't know if they're seeing it from Republicans in California, but they need to be pressing those people and demanding that they take action and do what is right for their constituents. The people need to be making that push. The people also need to be making very smart and very strategic efforts about where they put their time and their talent and their resources. Boycotting businesses, divestment matters. It makes a difference. Pulling back, right? Like, I'm not willing to watch certain programs. I'm not willing to watch certain networks. I'm not willing to shop certain places. Those are the things that will have an impact as we move into a different era of activism against the leadership that we have, whether that leadership is Democrat or Republican. We
Yeah.
have the power. We're the people. We still have the power in this democracy. It is, that power is not yet gone.
Yeah. Well, if you want to reach out to your representative and let them know how you feel, you can go to house.gov and find your representative. There's a place right there where you can put in your zip code and it'll tell you exactly who your representative is. You can reach out to them. There's a form you can fill out online if you're not somebody who likes to make calls. Go to house.gov. You can also reach the House of Representatives. Reach your representative at 202 224 3121. That's 202 224 3121. And let them know how you feel about this shutdown and whether or not you feel like the Democrats ought to hold the line and hold out for these subsidies. And people are going to start to feel the real impact of this very soon, as you said. So this is serious stuff. I'm proud of the Democrats thus far for holding out as long as they have. We will see where this goes in the very near future, I'm sure. Dr. Zackory Kirk, I want to thank you so much for joining us today to help illuminate all of this. I think you've helped a lot of us to understand on a much deeper level exactly what is going on right now. So thank you so much for being with us here on the front page today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And if you want to find out more about what Dr. Zackory Kirk is up to, he's a great political commentator. If you want to stay up to date on what is happening with issues like this, and you need that explained to you in very plain language, you can follow him on TikTok, IG, YouTube at TheZactivist, the Zactivist. It's just the word activist with a Z in front of it, TheZactivist. Or you can find him on Twitter at Zackory K. Once again, thank you, Dr. Kirk, for being with us today. We have so enjoyed having you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.